What if I told you that John Carpenter's The Thing drove its cast to genuine paranoia that lasted years after filming? That the movie's terrifying practical effects traumatized the actors so severely that some required therapy, and the film's catastrophic box office failure nearly ended Carpenter's career forever? The remake nobody wanted that became a masterpiece. John Carpenter's decision to remake Howard Hawks' classic 1951 film seemed like career suicide to everyone in Hollywood. What industry insiders didn't understand was that Carpenter wasn't remaking The Thing from another world. He was adapting John W. Campbell Jr.'s original novella, Who Goes There?, in ways that the 1950s censors would never have permitted. The original Hawks film featured a plant-based alien that terrorized an Arctic base with brute force. Campbell's story described a shape-shifting organism that could perfectly mimic any life form, creating paranoia through identity theft rather than physical violence. Carpenter recognized that this concept was far more psychologically terrifying than any monster movie. Universal Studios executives were horrified by Carpenter's proposal. They wanted a simple monster movie that could compete with other horror franchises, not a philosophical examination of identity and trust. The studio demanded script changes that would add more action and reduce the psychological complexity that made Campbell's story brilliant. Carpenter fought for his vision by proving that practical effects could create transformation sequences more disturbing than anything previously filmed. When executives saw early footage of Rob Bottin's creature work, they realized they had something unprecedented. The decision to trust Carpenter's instincts transformed what could have been a forgettable remake into a genre-defining masterpiece that redefined body horror forever. Rob Bottin's effects workshop of nightmares. 22-year-old Rob Bottin created The Thing's practical effects in a workshop that resembled a medieval torture chamber more than a Hollywood effects studio. What the cast discovered when visiting Bottin's workspace was so disturbing that several actors refused to return for fittings or consultations. Bottin's approach to creature design involved studying real autopsy footage and medical photographs of genetic disorders to understand how flesh could realistically transform. His workshop contained anatomical models, preserved organs, and experimental prosthetics that looked like genuine medical specimens. The smell alone was nauseating. A combination of latex, foam rubber, and the rotting organic materials Bottin used for texture reference. The young effects artist pushed himself beyond reasonable limits, working 18-hour days for months without breaks. Carpenter later revealed that Bottin collapsed from exhaustion during production and required hospitalization. The effects work became an obsession that consumed Bottin's physical and mental health in pursuit of unprecedented realism. Most disturbing was Bottin's method-acting approach to creature creation. He would mentally inhabit each transformation sequence, imagining the pain and terror that his creatures would experience. This psychological immersion helped create effects that felt genuinely alive and suffering, but it also left Bottin psychologically damaged. The artist later admitted that creating The Thing's horrors gave him nightmares that persisted for years after the film's completion. The cast's descent into method madness. John Carpenter deliberately fostered an atmosphere of suspicion and isolation among his cast that extended far beyond their performances. The director's psychological manipulation created genuine paranoia that enhanced the film's themes, but traumatized several actors in ways they're only now revealing. Kurt Russell embraced the paranoid atmosphere, staying in character between takes and refusing to socialize with other cast members. His isolation wasn't just professional. Russell genuinely began suspecting his colleagues of harboring secrets and conspiracies. This method approach enhanced his performance, but created real interpersonal tensions that lasted throughout production. Wilford Brimley's transformation into the paranoid scientist Blair required the veteran actor to explore genuine mental breakdown. Brimley spent hours studying footage of psychiatric patients and isolation-induced psychosis. His research became so intensive that family members worried about his mental state. The actor later revealed that playing Blair's descent into madness awakened his own fears about aging and cognitive decline. The most disturbing case involved Keith David, whose character Childs suspects everyone of alien infection. David began genuinely distrusting his fellow actors, interpreting normal social interactions as potential signs of alien infiltration. This paranoia became so severe that David required reassurance from Carpenter that the other actors weren't actually plotting against him. The psychological toll of inhabiting a world where anyone could be the enemy left lasting scars on several cast members. The blood test scene that broke everyone. The film's iconic blood test sequence required multiple takes over several days, subjecting the cast to psychological torture that made the fictional paranoia feel authentically terrifying. What audiences don't realize is that Carpenter deliberately withheld information about which actor would be revealed as the Thing, keeping everyone in genuine suspense. The actors didn't know who among them was playing the alien until the moment of filming each reveal. This approach created authentic surprise and fear in their performances, but it also generated real anxiety that bordered on psychological abuse. Cast members reported feeling genuinely afraid of each other during breaks between takes. The practical effects for the blood test required actors to work with heated blood substitutes that smelled terrible and created nauseating conditions. The fake blood was kept at body temperature to prevent coagulation, creating an atmosphere that felt disturbingly organic. Several actors became physically ill from the smell and texture of the effects materials. Most traumatic was the psychological preparation required for each actor to consider what it would feel like to discover they were actually the alien. Carpenter insisted that every cast member understand their character's potential transformation, requiring them to imagine losing their humanity. This exercise in existential horror left several actors questioning their own identity and consciousness in ways that extended far beyond the filming process. The Antarctic isolation that drove everyone mad. Filming The Thing in freezing temperatures at remote locations created genuine survival conditions that pushed cast and crew to their physical and psychological limits. The production schedule required months of work in sub-zero temperatures that made normal social interaction nearly impossible. The cast lived in communal housing that mirrored their characters' isolation at the research station. This arrangement was intended to enhance their performances through shared hardship, but it actually created cabin fever and interpersonal conflicts that threatened production. Actors reported feeling trapped and paranoid even when not filming. The extreme cold affected equipment constantly, requiring multiple takes of crucial scenes when cameras froze or sound equipment failed. These technical difficulties extended shooting days beyond endurance, creating exhaustion that made everyone more susceptible to the psychological pressure Carpenter was deliberately applying. Most challenging was the artificial lighting required for filming in constant darkness. The harsh, unnatural illumination created headaches and depression among cast and crew. Several people developed seasonal affective disorder symptoms that persisted after production wrapped. The combination of isolation, cold, and artificial lighting replicated the conditions that drive people insane in actual Antarctic research stations. The ending that destroyed test audiences. The Thing's ambiguous ending created one of cinema's most debated conclusions. But what most fans don't know is that Carpenter filmed multiple endings before settling on the final version that traumatized test audiences and studio executives alike. The original ending was even more nihilistic, showing both MacReady and Childs freezing to death without resolution about who might be the Thing. Test audiences found this conclusion so depressing that several people walked out during screenings. Studio executives demanded a more hopeful resolution that would provide closure. Carpenter's compromise was the final campfire scene where MacReady and Childs share a drink while suspecting each other. This ending satisfied neither the studio's desire for resolution nor Carpenter's vision of complete hopelessness. The director later revealed that he preferred the original ending but understood that audiences needed some ambiguity rather than pure despair. The most fascinating aspect of the ending involves the bottle of whiskey that MacReady shares with Childs. Some fans theorize that MacReady uses the drink to test whether Childs is human, but Carpenter has never confirmed this interpretation. The ambiguity was intentional. Carpenter wanted audiences to leave the theater feeling the same paranoia that consumed his characters. This psychological manipulation extended the film's horror beyond the theater, making viewers question their own ability to trust others. The box office disaster that vindicated genius. The Thing opened against E.T. the Extraterrestrial in summer 1982, creating a box office massacre that nearly destroyed John Carpenter's career, while ironically proving the film's artistic superiority. What industry analysts didn't anticipate was how perfectly The Thing's pessimistic vision would capture the cultural anxiety of the Reagan era. Universal Pictures expected The Thing to compete with Spielberg's family-friendly Alien by offering darker thrills for adult audiences. Instead, moviegoers chose optimistic escapism over psychological horror during a recession and Cold War tensions. The film's commercial failure was so complete that Carpenter didn't direct another major studio film for years. Critics initially dismissed The Thing as gratuitously violent and nihilistic, missing the sophisticated commentary on conformity and social paranoia. Roger Ebert called it a barf bag movie, while other reviewers focused on the gore effects rather than the philosophical complexity. These early reviews shaped public perception and contributed to the film's commercial disaster. The rehabilitation of The Thing's reputation took decades, beginning with home video releases that allowed viewers to appreciate details invisible in theatrical screenings. The film's themes of institutional distrust and social paranoia became more relevant as political scandals and corporate betrayals dominated news cycles. Modern audiences recognize The Thing as a masterpiece of practical effects and psychological horror that was simply too ahead of its time for 1982 audiences to appreciate. The legacy that changed horror forever. The Thing's influence on horror cinema extends far beyond its revolutionary practical effects, fundamentally changing how filmmakers approach paranoia and body horror in ways that continue shaping the genre today. The film proved that audiences could handle complex psychological themes if they were embedded in visceral horror that grabbed attention first. Rob Bottin's creature designs established new standards for practical effects that CGI still struggles to match. Modern filmmakers regularly cite The Thing's transformations as inspiration for their own creature work, recognizing that practical effects create authentic reactions from actors that digital effects cannot replicate. The film's success validated practical effects as artistic expression rather than simple technical achievement. The Thing's exploration of paranoia and identity influenced countless films, television shows, and video games that examine trust and social breakdown. From They Live to The Walking Dead, creators continue exploring the social dynamics that The Thing established through its isolated setting and shape-shifting antagonist. Most significantly, The Thing demonstrated that horror films could function as serious social commentary without sacrificing entertainment value. Carpenter's examination of 1980s paranoia through science fiction horror created a template for using genre elements to explore contemporary anxieties. The film's enduring relevance proves that great horror transcends its historical moment by tapping into universal fears about trust, identity, and social collapse. These revelations expose The Thing as far more than a masterpiece of practical effects. It's a psychological experiment that traumatized its own cast while creating one of cinema's most influential horror films. From Rob Bottin's obsessive creature work to the cast's genuine paranoia, every element of this production pushed artistic boundaries beyond safety into genuine danger. The next time you watch MacReady battle the alien menace, you'll recognize the real horror behind every scene, the psychological manipulation that created authentic fear, the practical effects that drove their creator to physical collapse, and the box office failure that proved audiences weren't ready for such uncompromising vision. If these hidden truths captivated you, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into cinema's most psychologically complex productions. What other horror films do you suspect contain real trauma disguised as entertainment? Share your theories in the comments and recommend this analysis to horror fans who think they understand The Thing's true legacy.